Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Transfer Podcast. This is the time of the year when Dave and I get all excited about the possibilities of what may occur and then slowly get disappointed when they don't. But we're going to start off, as we always do, at the early part of a window with a bit of optimism. And we do have quite a lot of Liverpool-related stuff to talk about, which I'm really looking forward to getting into with Dave. But before we do, man, this is our time to shine, right? Next couple of weeks, we have to, again, against all previous evidence, we have to hope this could be an exciting one for us.
This is the time where we need Edwards and the boys to channel Judas Iscariot from the Bible. We need them to be on the phone to John W. saying, give me that silver, whatever I have to do to get it, and let's get spending, because the bombs are coming out. And what I love, Trev, there's no talk of a real left back. There's no talk of a real centre midfielder. But Liverpool are being linked with players. And there's an excitement to that. Like, this is not a time for rationalisation. This is a time for spending, and spending hard.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that in our minds. But of course, it's hard to link up what we're wanting to talk about here and the stories that are floating around with the very harsh reality of what we've seen. I mean, we did last window with an opportunistic 10 million signing that's been an entire flop and may end up. Actually, now that you say it, we must get round to there. I don't remember seeing that in your rundown, but Chiesa is one of those guys who is reportedly unsettled and anxious to move. So we will get there eventually. But let's start with the big story, because we might as well start with something nice and exciting. And the links with Khvicha Kvaratskhelia are incredibly sort of engaging stories. He does profile as exactly the type of footballer that everyone wants at their club. He's exciting. He would do a super job for us on the opposite flank to Mo there. From the first time everyone sees this player, they think, yeah, that's a proper footballer. That's a guy I'd love at my club. Where did these stories come from? Because we do know there's proper origin and proper basis for Liverpool being linked any time that he is up for grabs, because we have been looking at this player for a long, long time. But also, unless I'm mistaken, his club are doing very well at the moment. Why in the name of God would they consider selling their best player while they're top of Serie A, I think?
There's so much into the mix. I mean, you're absolutely right. We have been linked with this player for some time. To be fair, since he probably destroyed us that game in the Champions League, didn't he, when we went and lost 4-1 away, and people who hadn't noticed him were like, who's this player? And then from there, Napoli win the title, and then the rest is history a little bit, But this is an elite left winger who, two-footed, but essentially a left winger where he plays most of his games. There's such a mix in this, and you're going to like the characters, because the manager involved, I know you love Tony Conte, Trev, and he has a penchant for falling out or being a bit prickly, can we say. So that's part of the mix as well. We have an owner of Napoli, a movie star director. This is a fact. This is not me casting shade. A man who has caught syphilis 4 times and is a notorious, difficult negotiator as well. And just a bit of a wild card. As someone described him, he's Silvio Berlusconi's replacement in terms of Italian football and their characters. So there's that in the mix. Plus, in the summer, Khvicha will have 2 years left to go on his deal. And he's made it quite clear that he's probably going to be looking to move on. So his value for an elite player, I mean, he's an elite player, let's not mince our words, it is decreasing, Trev. He would have cost a lot more another season ago, wouldn't he? It's going down. He's not going to sign a renewal. And he was close to PSG last summer. And PSG are the big players in this. And the only worry with PSG, they could blow us out the water. Now, I've seen reports saying that, they don't have to spend. Like, let's just clarify something. PSG in the last 18 months have shifted, as journalists are telling us, Messi, Neymar, Mbappe off the wage bill. Muani looks like he's going to go as well. So think how much they're going to shift and have already shifted off the wage bill. they could make a fat contract offer to Khvicha that we just couldn't match. Let's be honest about that. If they put like 300 grand on that, we're not matching that, are we? This just has the feel, though, Trev, that you get a little bit excited. Ornstein tweets it because we know what that carries and what that means. Then Joycey follows it up. And this is like those evenings on Friday when your parents were out and the Red Shoe Diaries comes on and you find an old, like, this is like prime stuff, isn't it? This is brilliant. So you know there's something in it. And all the patch journos have stood up today that there's a 1,000,001 hurdles. I mean, it starts with someone's got to go, if that even starts the process, PSG, all the other things as well. But a bit like Diaz, a bit like Gakpo in January, if there is a chance and Khvicha is available, as David Ornstein says, if he leaves in Napoli or in January, Liverpool will likely be involved. How involved depends on a lot of things.
I am loving this sort of underlay of filth in your imagery here. I have to say, it's tremendous. Echoes of the Berlusconi era bunga bunga parties. Let's get one of those on the go. We'll get him over to Merseyside, promise him some bunga bunga. I don't know, man. I think it's exciting, and we deserve to revel in a bit of this. And here's my take on it for what it's worth. With the PSG thing, yeah, if he's going for money, then he's going for money. But if he's going for clout, we've become more of a destination club than PSG are, and that's a fact. Their status, the money they have behind them, the amount of players they've had recently, it all boils down to one thing and one thing only, and that's wealth. But Liverpool have been far more admired as a football club in those years since he's been at Napoli. And I just think, that might be a thing. It's been one of the best things of the Klopp era is that now Liverpool is a destination club. If only we had people who were willing to pay the few shekels or the many shekels to get these people to that destination. Anyway, we'll continue to watch that one with fantastic amounts of interest because it is by far the most exciting thing. And of course, Dave, it's not a priority position for us. We know we need a DM. We know we need a left back. Our centre halves look a little bit thin on the ground all of a sudden in terms of who Arne fancies. But if you have the opportunity to get a player of that kind of talent in, I think you blow the bloody doors off. And like you say, with the Pornstein link, we're all very excited. Now, I have seen several places pouring cold water on it, saying Liverpool are unlikely to do this, Liverpool are unlikely to do that. So you take it with pinches of salt, I reckon, Dave. If you had to sort of weigh up your assessment of how real this is as a thing, what would you think? Especially again, given the guy is the best player at a club who are doing really well, atypically well, top of their league.
Right this second, it's like that Jim Carrey meme, like, so you're telling me there's a chance, and we are probably in like the 20% chance realm. And it is a big if, because we kind of laid out all the hurdles there to go through. There's a lot of hurdles to jump here. But if we get serious murmurs or the serious news breaks, Trev, about a forward departing, then the chances rocket through the roof for me. Unless that becomes serious, we kind of stay low. And I know people are saying, even the comments, like, is it a smokescreen? I mean, a smokescreen for what? This is a player that if they can get him, they will try and get him. I don't think it's that complicated. It's just the likelihood and the hurdles, that's the big question marks at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of get where Hustler's coming from in terms of it seemed like, were we ever going to pay 100 million for that dude, really? I do understand people having suspicions about that, but I think the feeling is that, we were, and we just got outbid. Also, to John, we are here to provide you that copium, my friend. So we'll try and find some more stuff here. Let's go to our next story. And this is involving a fella we want to stay at the club because, of course, our contract situation is rumbling on, man. And I think in a way that is almost unjustifiable at this stage. I think an awful lot of people can say, hey, it wasn't me, boss. It didn't happen on my watch, in terms of the new people who are there in the setup. And as a result, they have that defense. There are an awful lot of people who are pointing the finger at Richard Hughes, and I'm seeing real antipathy directed towards, the people who are, responsible for finalizing these accounts at the club. But they have that sort of out, if you like. And I think it's complicating the whole thing. It's just an unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in. But Mo Salah is one that we desperately want to say. He seems to be in the form of his life. We had some very interesting crack happen with him and Jamie Carragher, who is never really far away from a bit of controversy. Jamie, is he?
I would almost say, Trev, you'd think Jamie Carragher would have learned, but there is a part of me thinks he just almost revels in this whole scenario, doesn't he, a little bit, and sort of being front and centre. As long as he is front and centre, it seems to be okay with him. I mean, I kind of get where Mo's coming from, that they're different characters. This is what I come back to. VVD and Salah are elite players. That's the big similarity between them. They're different characters, though, aren't they? Mo is more of a free spirit. Virgil is more of a sort of stand-up leader. That's not being derogatory about either. That they're just different characters. And to be honest, there is a part of me thinks Mo Salah has earned the right to deal with his contract renewal any way he wants. Because let's be honest, he's the best player in the world. He is delivering elite numbers. It's absolutely a disgrace that Isaac won Player of the Month for December. Not a dig. How you won't give that to Mo Salah, who got 14 goal contributions in 6 games, just absolutely beggars belief. But like you, as much as we talk about these things and like the Salah and we talk around it, and even today, that bit of the Telegraph, the sort of mistranslation, because as it came out in Dutch, Virgil van Dijk is set to sign a new contract that breaks the bank. And people took that as even I at first was like, what's going on? Is that, no, it's just a Dutch expression, apparently, in an opinion piece. So there's nothing advanced with that. It absolutely sort of, it wounds me a little bit to say this to you, Trev. We have got nothing on developments for like, I'm desperate to tell you, like, at any time, like, they're going to be announced, or, they're lean, or whatever you want to call it. I'm kind of a little bit like, and I remember I said this to a journal and said, I'm a bit worried about this. It's like, there's no point in getting worried. Like, I'm not world hunger or my family worried, but I want Liverpool to keep their elite players. It's not a complicated fact, is it, surely? And my worry is, we are not hearing anything like we want to be hearing on these two.
It's very justifiable concern that everybody has, and it's based on the fact that the two lads are performing at such a high level, and they clearly want to stay at the club. It's easy for us to say, pay him whatever he wants. It's not as simple as that, and yet I don't really care about the complexities. I don't care about the club's finances in that regard. I don't care about bottom lines. I'm allowed to be irrational. And it's certainly, like we've said a million times on this show, Dave, we're not idiots. We understand that there has to be some caution around the finance, but at the same time, knowing that we are solvent it's not comforting. You know what I mean? Unless you're a very weird type of fella. I think everyone would rather that the club was sailing close to the wind financially, and yet we had get all the players and we're doing really well. So it's very hard to ask us to be rational about stuff like that. And it's so frustrating that we can't say, yeah, well, it looks like it's as good as done now, the Van Dijk one, the Salah one. But the one that doesn't look anywhere near done at all is the Trent situation. And on the back of what was attitudinally, inarguably, a shocking outing against United. some people I've seen rally round and say that we shouldn't be bagging on the player. And to those people, I say, well, yeah, but that's not what we do here. And every one of us, I think you included, would love to see Trent Alexander-Arnold continue to play for the rest of his career at Liverpool. That's a really easy fix if Trent Alexander-Arnold wants to do it. He just has to come to an agreement with the club where he feels like he's getting what he's worth. But also, you would like to think that he would be making noises that is what he wants to do. And his silence is deafening, Dave. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, the way this keeps getting briefed, and you can see it consistently in the way it's been briefed, is Liverpool telling everyone, well, Trent has not told us that he wants to go. Those words haven't come from his agent and from Trent. And I'm not saying that, I don't think that's a lie, but at the same time, telling you I'm desperately going to stay, I'm going to ignore the overtures of this, I'm not interested in going to play with Jude. Like, we know, kind of, as you said, the silence is deafening. The other worry, Trev, is off the field matters and Anfield have always been separate. You know, there's been that like separation of church and state. Like, we'll deal with the contracts, but we're fucking winning a league title and nothing gets in the way of that. Like, and we separate the two. And to be fair, with two of those players, anyone who's got any question marks over Salah and Van Dijk's performances and attitude is absolutely insane this season. But that United game for us just felt like church and state got blurred, didn't they? You could even hear it in the stadium, people going like, oh, if you're not going to try, and it just felt like it got into the stadium. And to me, that is a pivotal tipping point, because I saw someone say, like, and people quoting it, there were elements of performance that were borderline unacceptable on Sunday. No, there were elements of performance that were completely unacceptable on Sunday. We're playing them. Maximum effort and chasing shouldn't even be up for question. It should just be a given, end of story. There was unacceptable elements. And to me, it's not the stage where I think he needs to say something now. And I actually think, and people might not like this, I don't really care. Even if he comes out and says, listen, I think I do want to go to Real, you know, this is this, you know, whatever story he gives, I've achieved all I can, etc. There is a part of me just wonders if at least it puts everything else to the back now and it's right. Just give everything for 6 months before you disappear into the sunset type of thing. But for the first time on Sunday, Trev, my concern was contract stuff got into the player's head. It got into the stadium, and that just can't happen again at all. We are after a title, for God's sake. And one way or another, it's just he's different from the other two because you've got no question marks around the other two, nothing at all. But something for me needs to happen now. Either way, we cannot have this silence with Trent anymore.
When you're having a patch where people are starting to show signs of wear and tear, like someone like Grav there in the last match just sort of looked out on his feet. Curtis Jones really struggled. When you have a sticky patch like we're currently experiencing in the last 2 matches, you need everyone to be pulling in the same direction. And there's the potential, Dave, for this to get toxic really quick. Like really quick. You're talking about, you know, the main concern. The main concern is the cardboard box with the medals that is thrown out there, take yours every year. That's what we want to get back to, the regularity of winning. We can't say that. We should have had so many more bits of silverware in the Jurgen Klopp era. And it's easy to say, well, we didn't have this and we were up against that and all the rest of it. Bottom line is we don't have those trophies. We don't have those league titles. We don't have those Champions League titles. We were so close to them. There's an opportunity now to push on, and in this next era with Slot, to actually get those medals, get those trophies in the cabinet. And nothing can derail that, my friend. Nothing. No one should be allowed to derail that. If Jamie Carragher can come out and talk about Mo Salah being sort of unprofessional or in some way unsettling Liverpool in the way that he spoke to the press, Well, for the love of God, I know it's a precious local sacred cow, but can we just admit that the same thing should happen with Trent, and that he should at least do the opposite then, right? Because the local guy, come out and show your local pride and say you want to stay here. If only the club would match your expectations. Everyone's on side with Trent then. Everyone says, look, he wanted to stay and the bastards wouldn't pay him. It's a simple fix. It shouldn't be this complicated. We have obviously the potential for fellas to go out the door and raise a bit of money for a Khvicha or for a Trent replacement should it be needed. And a couple of those guys are obvious enough. Quiveen, when the Mamardashvili arrives, is starting to look around them and think, well, what do I do here? Or maybe Yaros is, or one of them is. And so there's a potential source of some income. Ben Doak has been pulling a few trees lately and seems to be beginning to live up to the potential that he had. And now we're starting to turn up our nose at bids of 15 and thinking we could push that closer to the 30 mark.
Yeah.
And what's painfully obvious is that the potential biggest sign or chance of some income for us is our misfiring striker, our big money buy, the guy we all love, but who it seems, I think, for most people, has probably hit a wall in terms of his progress at the club, because if anything, and it's rare in the Slot era, but if anything, he's gone backwards in the Arne Slot time. I thought last season he was really good. I saw him live a few times and I was just so impressed with the kid. And I just feel like he looks a bit lost. So Darwin Núñez, Ben Doak, talk to us about the potential for them being sources of some income to allow our penny pinchers to go and do something.
Yeah, there's some strange one. I mean, Ben Doak, all the noises are, I mean, we know, as per Ornstein and Joyce, that Ipswich and Crystal Palace have had bids rejected, 115, 116 million. There was a lot of suggestions that they were going to come back. The only thing to note is Crystal Palace are in advanced negotiations for another Championship youngster who's an attacker who plays out wide, funnily enough. So you do wonder if they're going to come back. You now have questions as well about Ipswich because they're set to sign an attacker, a young winger as well. So it seems like Liverpool, they're encouraging these bids. That's the noise we're getting. Like Liverpool are not like, oh my God, I can't. Like Liverpool are like, put the money up and this will happen. It's almost like they said 15, 16. We've said 30. That's a starting point for negotiations, isn't it? It always had that feel of meet in the middle and, give us a deal with a bit like Carvalho, Trev. Give us 23 plus bonuses if he meets certain things. And, we'll all shake hands and Ben Doak can go and be a star at a lower level Premier League club. So that was the plan for him. I do just wonder, though, if Liverpool have maybe, because they put 30, that Palace have gone, nah, we'll go and get another younger talent. And whether, as we know, Ipswich are set to go a winger and think, well, there's, as much as we like Doak, there's better value in the market. So I just have a few question marks if they've maybe, like they did with Harry Wilson that time, just put too high a value and he stayed around on loan. I just have a wonder about that. Núñez. This is one that, and I saw quite a lot of people scoffed at this because Anfield Watch poured it out that, Núñez has Saudi interest and all that. And people were like, nonsense, there's nothing. So we went digging on this, as you know, Trev. There is interest in Darwin Núñez. But does that mean Darwin Núñez goes? That's why the sort of line says there, unlikely but possible. Our info is there is definite Saudi interest in Darwin Núñez. There's a couple of issues with this. And I was going to say, Núñez's wife is pregnant. That's not the issue. What the issue is Núñez doesn't want to be shifting countries at a time when your wife is, pregnant at this stage and the culture change and everything like that. At the same time, the other info that we had with Núñez is they have brought loan offers to the table, but Liverpool are very much like, we are not going to let you go unless someone definitely comes in because we are all for keeping the squad the same unless there's a really good deal. And maybe, and I don't know this for definite, it could be 2 and 2 and getting 27. There is a link to Khvicha, but our info is there is definitely interest in Darwin Núñez. Does Núñez want to go? That is a completely different matter, and it makes sense. And these two, this is utterly bizarre, Trev. This is like hipster championship manager stuff. I mean, Dubravka looks like he is going to depart to Saudi, and there's a lot of talk from the Newcastle side, and we are hearing that there is interest in Queeve from Newcastle. Nick Pope is a bit old. He gets injured quite a bit. I mean, if they can get Kelleher for 15 million, I actually think in Newcastle terms, that pushes them up at a chance of the Champions League because we rate him highly, this boy. This kid is special. The other one, Trev, Simas. Get this for hipster galore. Simas, Greek lad, 19, PAOK is his club, on loan in Bundesliga 2 at Nuremberg. I mean, could you get any more hipster? I actually saw his name, Simas, like TZIMS. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what I ordered when me and the wife went 5-star all-inclusive to Paphos last summer. And it came on a stone plate and cost me like €30 extra supplement. That's what I thought it was when I first read it. But apparently, never heard of him. He could walk past us on the street, let's be honest, and we couldn't tell yet. The nerds love this kid. The nerds love this kid this much. Me and Bart's are going to run bits on him on transfer market metrics. He could walk past me, slap me in the face, and I wouldn't have any idea who he is. But Simas, on loan from PAOK at Nuremberg, keep an eye on because the stats nerds really love this. Again, before anyone starts, can you tell me anything about him? No. There you go.
Why would you be able to tell anyone about him? And listen, it's possibly my favorite part of everything we've spoken about so far because there is no more nerdy championship manager story that I've ever heard. And don't you love the small bit of potential that this kid could be an absolute world beater that we've moneyballed in the back door? I would love that. I would love that. I have to say, I'm trying to keep an eye on some of the comments, and I saw a phrase there that sort of rubs me the wrong way. We don't push stories. We're giving you the information that they've, through hard work, talking to various journalists and sources, has been given. We have no agenda here whatsoever, except for Liverpool to get good players in the door, and we'd love to keep all the good players at Liverpool. That's it. That's it. There's no pushing of anything. I will say, I have a little conspiracy theory for you. I want you to imagine me now with one of those boards with some red twine going from place to place. Yes. So here's where I think the Khvicha thing may have legs. Khvicha is Georgian. Mamardashvili is Georgian. Khvicha is at Napoli. And Napoli and their manager like Chiesa. There are things coming together, Dave, that I like there. There are possible alignments that could happen. Now, I think the story that was being pushed earlier on was the idea of Núñez away. Listen, I think most humans are going to say that Núñez is likely to go. I would think it's probably more likely he'll go to a good European club or a solid European club. The AC Milan link was there earlier on. One way or the other, it's probably unlikely to happen in this window, and therefore the Khvicha thing is unlikely to happen this window. But do watch this space for this time in summer, because those two things are very interesting. That Chiesa thing is something that we kind of have up our sleeve as a little extra in the deal. And I do think the fact that Mamardashvili is going to be at the club, where we have an abundance of goalkeepers, theoretically, unless one of our big names decides to not be there, we have a thing there that the stars could align. So let's hope that that is the case. Have we anything else in the Liverpool region now that we've gotten that class Greek lad story out of the way? Oh yeah, hang on. I wanted to ask you about Tyler Morton. Any whispers around him? Because listen, the lad's not getting a game. I know he probably would play now tomorrow, but he's not well. But his opportunities are so limited, just like a certain Harvey Elliott's opportunities appear to be very limited, just like what's his name? Endo's opportunities are very limited. There are lads that the manager does not seem to fancy, and they've all got to be having a think about their future. Talk to me about Tyler Morton, and have you heard anything about Harvey Elliott? Because that's a story that I'm hearing around a lot, but nothing. There was one. There was a Brighton link. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah. Yeah, Sky Sports and a few others have had it. Brighton and Dortmund were the other ones that were linked with Harvey Elliott. I mean, we kind of talked about this because there wasn't too much we had. But if you just look at just the evidence in front of your eyes, it's quite clear that Arne Slot doesn't particularly fancy Harvey Elliott. He's had numerous opportunities. And even you think like the Carabao would have been a great chance. But I mean, 5 minutes against United, 12 minutes against Fulham. Like the evidence. I mean, Harvey Elliott is on course for something like a 480-minute season, I think someone put as well. And I know people are saying that, oh, well, he's in injuries, and I get that. There is no evidence you can put in front of us, is there, Trev, that Arne Slot fancies Harvey Elliott at the moment. We've seen that. Even Curtis Jones, who I love as a player, by the way, hasn't been particularly good over the last few games. Do you think he might have changed him out? No, he's still done Jota, Nunes, others as sub. So, yeah, I do surprise, or would be surprised if there is an interest and Harvey Elliott isn't thinking about that. And I can see people saying in the chat panel, like, oh, no chance dead. Like, I'm not saying I don't rate Harvey Elliott. What I'm saying to you is, if the manager doesn't fancy him, what do you expect a little bit? Like, the manager doesn't fancy Morton. The manager doesn't fancy Endo. There's just clear evidence there. And you asked me that question. And Endo is that Sheffield United inquiry. And the only thing we got on that is that Liverpool has still not actually answered that at all, which is kind of like, is it just a refusal by silence a little bit? It's kind of a bit tragic for Tyler Morton because he's shone in so many places. He just needs to get out the club. And to be honest, we just need to move him on for money and for his career and for us to get something in the pot a little bit as well. Endo, I mean, at the moment, you have to be honest, Endo is not letting anyone down when he plays, Trev. That's really important to say. And with the Gomez and everything like that, he's quite important a little bit at the moment, Endo, isn't he? Because he can play centre half and he can cover a few bits as well. So absolutely not expecting Endo to go anywhere. But as you said, Trev, because I can see some of the comments, we are not forwarding an agenda. We're telling you sometimes we haven't got anything on it. We're being honest. We're just telling you what we found out. I am not criticising Harvey Elliott as a player. I am telling you, as you can all see, look at his minutes. I think there's real evidence Slot doesn't fancy him. That's all it is.
Look, for the hard of hearing, it's a transfer show. So we're talking about the movement or potential movement of players. And any stories that come up linked with our players, we do them the courtesy of talking about them if they come from any sort of a semi-reputable source or if they have any whiff of sort of believability about them. And everyone we've spoken about so far could well be up for grabs and may well be considering their future. The clubs that they're being linked to, that's all speculation. But the fact that, as you say, certain players aren't in the loop on a regular basis will be giving them food for thought, especially you would imagine if they don't do it now, that the club will back their manager in the next window, at least reasonably heavily, because what's the point of employing a man if you're not going to give him a chance to form a squad in his own likeness? He's working with all these Liverpool players that Jurgen Klopp recruited that we love, and we don't want to see the back of any of them. But he is nonetheless working with Jurgen's squad. There's still regular mentions of Jurgen and how things were under Jurgen. That's a difficult thing for Arne Slot, and he'll be loving the idea of being able to refresh this group with players that he particularly wants for the way that he wants to play. Anyone who's thinking any different is completely missing the point. Yes, Arne is very amenable, affable. He won't rock the boat. But I don't get the feeling, Dave, to you, that he's a yes man. I get the feeling that he will be pushing for what he wants. He seems very self-possessed. A lot of people try to dismiss him simply as a yes man who'll come in and do whatever FSG won't rock the boat. That's not what this kid is doing. He's biding his time. He's doing a super job of being politic in the right ways, and he will be looking to add quality that he desires for this team. And we're going to be watching very closely and hoping that the stories that we have coming up for you in the next show are a little bit more positive and that we have actual movement in the right direction when it comes to those contracts as well. But let's look around the Premier League as well as we move into the next part of the show. And United are sort of always very interesting to look at. I heard a story during the week. I'm just going to leave it at this. I'll let you go into the details. It was maybe yesterday or the day before that United were in a situation where they were looking at selling some of their young talent. And I honestly don't know what the background of the story was. I've been really busy with work all week. Obviously, I know Ineos have gotten into this cost-cutting thing, and we saw all the bad publicity they had with the Christmas bonuses and all that nonsense, and cutting poor old Sir Alex's $2 million a year junket that he had went down very badly, and there was other club legends who were frozen out as well in terms of financial stuff. So it all looked very bad from a PR point of view. But have things gotten that bad that they need to sell their assets at the moment? What's happening there?
It's just still an absolute mess of a club. And even like Paul Scholes said it like the other day, that how long have Ineos been in? It's over 12 months and they've not improved anything. I mean, Sir Jim, bless him, still seems to think the way forward is reducing the biscuit budget in the canteen. So Sheila's had to go from like bourbons to rich tea, as though that's going to improve performance and the marginal gains that Dave Brailsford's on about, or something like that. Like, what are you absolutely talking about? The debacle over Ten Hag. I mean, if anyone clocked it during the week, Kieran Maguire, like a well-known, respected football finance guy, said there's one massive club have got real financial issues, and it's quite known by a few that it is United. They've had to pay out the Ten Hag. It's quite clear that they've got FFP issues, you know, the roof's leaking, all the things like this. And the story that, and it's, let's just be clear, Trev, it's come from Ornstein, Romano, loads of journalists reported on it. United would even sell the youngsters like Mainu, Garnacho, because they can book it as pure profit, can't they, on the books, and what that means for FFP for a certain amount. Now, at the moment, they are trying to negotiate contract renewals for that. I mean, in terms of just madness, they were running Slabhead down. They went and got D Slabhead from Serie A. And now, Trev, they're going to extend Slabhead. Harry Maguire is getting an extension on Amorim Say So. I mean, like, what are you actually doing? Marcus Rashford on an absolute fortune. I mean, you've seen the stories. Like, look at Romano, like Juventus, AC Milan, Dortmund. They had pictures of his entourage in Milan and everything like that. This is going to end up a Jadon Sancho style story, whereas United are still paying 300 grand a week of his wages, and Dortmund are contributing a Wambar, a Chomp, and a Chalk Ice per week to his wages. Like, you know, something stupid like that is going to happen. It's just an absolute mess. I mean, they've renewed Diallo. That's positive. But again, it's an increased wage in the column you don't want. Casemiro. I mean, yeah, honestly, I watched Casemiro come off the bench in a game last night, Trev, or a couple of nights ago, sorry. And he looked like the last time I played football. But what you didn't know about me the last time I played football was I'd had one of those giant Yorkshires with sausage and mash and gravy in like half an hour before. So I was a bit bloated. He looked exactly the same, except he was wearing gloves. That was the only difference. If they can get any money from Casemiro, from like the Saudis, you know, and it'd be interesting to see what they would give. They will do that. But for all this talk of Amorim's going to do this, and it almost makes it worse that we got a draw against these. That club is still, even after all this time under Ineos, an absolute mess. And let's not pretend we love to see it.
It's a constant source of joy. I'm a massive Schadenfreude fan, and any time that they're suffering in any way, I have no shame in admitting that I am massively enjoying it. Chelsea are often very entertaining for us on this show, and God knows they have a lot of players to do business with. Are we hearing things about lads on the way out? Because apparently some of their bigger signings and more recent signings are already up for grabs. That's I think, a fair indicator that, you know, their scattergun recruitment process is not working out so well. However, you know, they've had a comparatively solid season, and we're certainly in the running for title contention in people's conversations up until a couple of weeks ago, and could get back into it. So what are we hearing about the ins and outs potentially there at Chelsea, Dave?
Maresca has got Sweeney Todd Jr. potential. I like the way he talks. I like the cut of his jib, Trev. He just gives us something a bit more. Like, even as that quote there, that's from the press conference today. People were expecting to say, oh, we would maybe see what happens with Cassidy and Chilwell. No, they're not in my plans. They're considering options to leave. Love it. Get them on the chopping block. Executed. End of story. Said the same with Chuck Wemmicker, the other press conference. Not in my plans. Dewsbury Hall, as he said a couple of press conferences ago, yeah, it's not really working out. He's smart to look at options, and we understand if he does want to move on. Dizazi, I mean, they've got a to Fofana. And it's funny that Maresca says, oh, we're really short of centre-halves. No, you've got about 26 of them. You just don't fancy any of them. That's a different story altogether. So they can't do what they want to do there. So it's just funny, Trev. Nkunku, that, you know, he wants to go. So what's going to happen with him? That's a bit strange. The other thing is, Mark Guéhi, the Crystal Palace captain, centre-half for England, former Chelsea youth products. Now, whenever you ask Premier League managers about other teams' players, you know, they always give that standard line, Trev, it's not my player. I'm not going to talk about him. Oh, no, not Maresca. God bless him. He's like, oh, yeah, Mark Guéhi is a great player. We love him. He just is with another team. Like, yes, lad, tell us what you're thinking. Like, don't mince, don't hide your words at all. So, in all honesty, there's a lot of good coming out of Maresca's mouth. Even if it's bad for Chelsea, it's great for our show. And I just hope he continues just speaking whatever's there.
You love to see it. You love to see it. And like you say, it's so rare to hear a manager saying, yeah, he can go. He can do one as well. Yeah, he should watch it. He should look out for some moves. Fantastic stuff. And like, you know, here's the thing. Do you feel like, and is this the way the story is forming, that, you know, we saw the absolute flagrant spending under Sweeney Todd. Like, Bowley just went bananas with the funds, the sort of polar opposite of the FSG approach. And are there chickens coming home to roost now in terms of, well, all of these deals and these long 7-8 year deals that they were offering people are all sort of getting very complicated, and the squad is unwieldy and so on and so forth. Like, do you think, are they facing the same kind of pressures perhaps as United are, in terms of, well, we got to get our business straight here because things don't look right?
The one thing I respect Chelsea for is their complete lack of respect for the rules, Trev. I love the way they do it. It's like, got a financial problem, sell the training ground back to yourself. Got another financial problem, sell our own hotel back to ourselves. Like, oh, we still got another financial problem. sell the women's back to ourselves. Just like that blatant loophole exploitation, just disregard for traditions and anything the way it was. I mean, even last summer, I adored the way they tried to do like American style player trades, and Todd Bowley couldn't get it round his head that he couldn't trade like Ben Chilwell to the LA Dodgers almost for like a relief pitcher and 50 million quid. Just, I love the way they just have a disregard for tradition and the way things are done as standard in football. I think what fascinates me is the Premier League were almost forced to ratify their accounts, Trev. UEFA, they've still got problems with Chelsea because their laws are stricter. If Chelsea make the Champions League qualifying spots, I'm fascinated to see what UEFA will do with their accounts, because UEFA aren't the type to allow you to sell your training ground back to yourself and all this type of stuff. So it's fascinating what's going on, but Chelsea's attitude is just live by the sword, die by the sword. They can't moan about players being loyal because they force long-term Chelsea players like Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah to go and train at leisure centres. Do you know what I mean? And ban them from training ground when they're trying to sort of raise money on the thing. So long story short, I adore the chaos around Chelsea. And let's not pretend for the last 12 months we haven't got most of our best stories out of Chelsea and all the things around them. They are our most consistent, inconsistent performers. And with Maresca, we may just have a new Machiavellian-style character in the mix. So I'm all for it. Carry on as you are, Chelsea.
Oh, it's box office. Loving it. Let's have a look at Newcastle and then City. I know you mentioned earlier on that Dubravka came up in the conversation, and he's one of those ones that's eyeing a deal that might make him a bit of money. But there's also a lot of other lads there, Almiron, Longstaff, who are not in and around the first team at the moment. And of course, everybody knows that Arsenal are just going to sign Isak, right? That's what they're telling us anyway. All their fans just say it's a matter of time. So what are we seeing in terms of Newcastle potential business in this window? And do give me your take on the Isak thing, because I mean, he is very much the flavor of the month, very admired at the moment. But I think his the amount of money that they will want for him is going to mean that he's unattainable for most Premier League clubs unless City decide they desperately need him or something.
Honestly, it wasn't even on the docket, but I saw earlier, Trev, when asked about Isaac, Lego Head did his Arsenal press conference earlier. You can't make this up. Remember Lego Head, who spent like 700 million over recent years, generally was asked about transfers and what he said. Oh, obviously we want to do this, but because of the situation, we're not going to be able to. We just haven't had the ability to spend like other clubs have. Those are the words that, you know, like as though like they're hard done to, or he's been forced to work on a shoestring. Mr. 700. Like, what? I can't even speak on that anymore. Like that darts commentator, I can't speak about that anymore. It's just insane. Newcastle, I mean, Dubravka has the Saudi deal lined up, and there's a lot of people clocked, Trev. He was crying after the Carabao Cup semi-final and waving bye-bye. So the full suspicion is he's off, which then does make you wonder just about Kelleher, and if we'll see anything on that, that will be interesting. Almiron, they are trying to get him out to MLS. It's just he's negotiating that at the moment. The problem is Sean Longstaff is in the last year of his contract, like, you know, in the last 6 months. He's a Geordie boy. He loves the club and everything. What he knows, Trev, what he knows is they are just trying to renew him so they can flog him as pure profit. That's what Newcastle are trying to do, which is like, would you really do that? I'll sign a contract so I don't get the free transfer money and you do it. Like, come on, you know, so there's that. Isaac, he's just not signing that new deal. And why would he? He's player of the month. He's the player of the month for December. Understandably, they've put a stupid fee on him for, I think it's 150 million have, just because it's us saying we're not going to sell him in January. It's that simple. However, if Newcastle do not get Champions League football, he's made it quite clear, his people, he's off. It's basically, if we don't get Champions League this season, I want to go to a Champions League club. And a little bit of me thinks, well, to be fair, he is a brilliant player. I do like Isaac. He's got a lot to his game. And this is, Newcastle fans can take this how they want. He's better than Newcastle, isn't he? He's better than a 6th, 7th place team. There's a lot of the top boys will want him. And the price is going to have to come down in the summer because he's not signing that renewal. He'll only have a few years left to go as well. Whether, Mr. Kroenke, if he gives his begging bowl to Lego Head, will fund that. Who knows? But yeah, it is the one to say, as much as Newcastle are trying, Isaac is not going to do that renewal. And if they don't get Champions League, bye-bye in the summer. And City, we've saved till last. Trev, we could be talking about 3 players coming in. Marmoush, they want him. It's quite clear they're prepared to spend big. He's the forward option because they know they messed up by letting Alvarez go and get in, because as soon as Haaland stops scoring, there's nothing, is there? You need, goals in your team. They forgive a lot of sins. This centre-back, I mean, I know he's worth 82 at Scrabble. I think it's Kusanov, it's pronounced, in all honesty. A young Lons centre-back who's highly rated, apparently. I can't pretend I've watched him. But there's talk, Trev, this could even go up to a deal of 50 million euros for an unproven young kid from the French league. Now, I don't know, so I can't say he could be the next superstar, but it seems a lot of money. And funnily enough, he was absent from training with his Lons team. And even Will Still, who's the English manager, that ginger guy who went to France and got his diploma and all that, he's their manager and just said in his press conference today, yeah, he's ill. You can probably guess what's going on, lads, type of thing, in all honesty. So there's that in the mix. And then the other one, Victor Rice, a player that we've mentioned, the young Brazilian at Palmeiras, who was of interest to all the big European clubs. Brighton had a deal, but couldn't get it done. City are in for him as well. I mean, you could see Pep spending big, big money by the end of January. And what makes me laugh in all this, 2 young centre-halves and Marmoush. Has everyone just ignored the fact that Gundogan's about 78 and running around that midfield on a Zimmer frame? Surely you'd have thought a midfielder would be in the mix. But what do I know? I am not Pep Guardiola, but they are set to be the biggest spenders, you would think, in this window.
Has the connection to our pal Mountain Nance at Sociedad gone away, or is that still a potential move for them as well?
I think the problem is with Mountain Nance, he doesn't want to go too far. And all the suspicion around Europe is after all this talk with us City. Guess who many suspect will end up at Real Madrid this summer?
Of course. Good God. Oh my God, it's worse than Bayern. That's one thing I want to ask you briefly. We're talking about City doing business. We're talking about Pep Guardiola looking to beef up his squad, whatever. Is this not the most clear indicator of all that they're not even vaguely concerned about anything coming down the pipeline with the charges? That it's just what we all cynically thought was going to happen. It's just going to be made go away with money and lawyers, because you wouldn't have thought they'd be scrambling around looking to do such business if, unless things were looking comparatively safe.
Yeah, it's not a good sign. I mean, they're in deliberation stage, aren't they? The case is finished, so we're waiting on the deliberations of these 3 legal bodies or people who no one knows, and then we'll wait for the judgment, which many suspect won't even come out until the end of this season. There's a delay in that. The only bit I got on it, and 4 people say agenda, this is me telling you I didn't get much on it. The only bit I got on it around this was City have already, or whoever loses the Premier League or City, Trev, has their appeal ready. So basically, as soon as there's a judgment one way or another, this then gets wrapped up for another 6 months why there's an appeal. So realistically, if you think about that, the end of it, I mean, we're talking like a year's time probably till we get a set result. And even then, would it surprise you if there's an appeal on an appeal or more? Do you know what I mean? This is not getting sorted anytime soon. And yeah, to me, it just does make you think City are just thinking, we'll just appeal it, we'll do whatever, and we'll carry on.
Before we move to Europe, there is some sign of Wolves and Ipswich and Villa and deals going on in and around those three clubs. We also know, don't we, that in Reynate Nouri, there's a player there that Liverpool have been linked with in the past and would absolutely be the profile of the type of guy we might be looking for, depending, of course, on whether a certain other fullback stays around, because that would change the profile of fullback we'd be looking at. But just to finish us up on the Premier League briefly then, Wolves, Ipswich, Villa, what's the connections there? What is the story around those three?
It's an interesting one, I tell you, with Wolves and the way they work as well. They're known to be quite skint. They've been quite honest about that, Trev. I mean, even in the summer when they bought Larson, the 30 million forward, they only put 3 million quid of it down. They still owe 27 million. So everyone knows about Wolves' financial difficulties and how they've really restricted spending, which then surprised a lot of people when Wolves are one of the actual spenders in this window and have spent 20 million euros on a defender called Agbadou. Now, I don't know much about him, about Agbadou, but apparently he likes to push pineapple, shake a tree, I've heard, realistically. So you can ask your dad if you're not sure. You had to go there, didn't you? Yeah. Realistically, folks. So there's that. So, yeah, so then people are like, well, where are they balancing the books there? A little bit like Kuna Ainori, we know a player of being of interest to that. So Wolves are just a lot of journos are talking, just keep an eye on them because no one's really sure like how they're balancing their books a little bit. So it will be interesting on that one. Villa have got a little boost on their books that they got Jadon Philogene back from Hull and now he's gone to Ipswich. That deal's pretty much done for about 21 million quid. So Ipswich have got another one through the door. I suppose the bad news for us on that is Palace and Ipswich were the two in for Doak, weren't they, Trev? And all of a sudden, Ipswich are now pretty much completing a winger signing. Palace are set to go for this young winger from the Championship. We might just have gone a little bit too high on the Doak valuation, shall we say, because there was a lot of talk they were going to come back about 20 million, and it sounds like Liverpool have sort of held steadfast on this 30, probably with an idea of bringing it down a bit, but maybe just too much, who knows. So, yeah, that's helping, but that is a real boost to Aston Villa's FFP concerns as well, isn't it? Jadon Philogene, 21 million quid in the coffers.
Yeah, it sounds like, again, as usual, people doing bits, except us. Let's have a quick look around Europe, and we'll start with stories about Muani and also Douglas Luiz, and then we're going to finish with a little bit of a chat about the Saudis and bring us back full circle. So what was the Muani story? Certainly being linked with a lot of high-profile clubs, and apparently things not looking or going as well for Douglas Luiz as he was hoping at Juve.
It's the funny ones, these Frankfurt forwards, aren't they? Like Jovic, Muani, even you wonder about Marmoush, because they kind of bang at Frankfurt and then they don't do too well. And that is kind of what's happened with Muani, isn't he? Now, PSG are quite happy to move him on because he's not wanted, he's not got wages. And to be honest, all the big links in Muani, Trev, there is a couple of European ones, but United and Spurs are your major ones that have been linked with him. So it wouldn't surprise you if he ends up in the Premier League at all there for some sort of strange loan deal. Not that I think he's that great, but that's just personal opinion. Douglas Luiz, this move to Juventus for him has been an absolute disaster. When I say absolute disaster, Trev, Alicia Lehmann, his girlfriend, did follow him to Juventus as well. So it's not been that a disaster, let's be honest on that, realistically. But in terms of he's not enjoying it, Juventus don't want him. There's a lot of talk that this weekend will pretty much be his last game for Juventus. And who likes him? Premier League clubs galore. Forest, Fulham, United. People will say us. I've not heard us. That'll be an absolute lie. But there is a lot of Premier League clubs in the mix ready to take Douglas Luiz on loan. So if it would be no surprise whatsoever if by the end of this window, Douglas Luiz and Kolo Muani are at a Premier League club.
To wrap us up then, we do have another Saudi story. We saw the new Saints story during the week. I mean, I'll leave you to kind of sum it up in a nutshell for people who haven't seen it. But it's just really, really interesting because we associate, don't we? And it was obviously getting on some people's wicks earlier on, but we associate the Saudis with having a lot of money to throw around to tempt increasingly younger footballers to that league, increasingly moving away from that profile of veterans, big name veterans, and moving towards getting lads in their prime. But let's start, before we go back to that aspect of it, with the new Saints angle, because this just shows up Saudi and the way they think about business and money in such an interesting light.
Yeah, as when we asked about this, it kind of came out a bit last summer, and this is just an example of how it works. The Saudis and the football element, they don't treat it the same as the European football clubs, who, you know, Trev, everything is done instantly, fast. Things are paid quick and move quick. In essence, when you have as much money as Saudi, things to move quick and do small business deals probably doesn't mean that much to you, does it, realistically? And it's just a different culture and way of thinking. Unfortunately, one of the Saudi clubs bought a forward from New Saints. Now, we're not talking in football terms anything big at all. As we know, Trev, it's around 200 grand, wasn't it? Which is, let's be honest, is very paltry in football terms. But let's be respectful. For New Saints, that's money that guarantees their future, doesn't it? And pays things and builds stands and all stuff like that. They've not given them the money. They've not paid it. So New Saints have actually contacted FIFA and UEFA saying hold on, they're in breach. And they've looked and gone, yeah, they are. They've just not paid it. So they've spoken to the Saudis saying let's not pretend you can't afford this. What's going on? Genuinely, Trev, this was mystifying when we got it back. This was absolutely insane. The answer that came back was, well, when we bought this player, it was the previous guy in charge, the guy who was at the club. I'm the guy in charge, and I think this player's, so I don't want to pay that money. It's that's not how it works. You don't get to try and then not pay the fee. So I think it's just a good example when you talk to people about it, how it is a different mindset and different culture. And if people think is that right? Well, don't forget, do you remember when we sold Fabinho to Ali? Do you remember when we sold him and that 40 million? It nearly fell through twice because they didn't pay the money. And a lot of people were like, what's going on with Fabinho at the time? He's supposed to have been gone and he's not been on any trips. It's just because the money wasn't forthcoming. And Liverpool did say, at one stage, if you do not pay this money, this transfer, and all of a sudden someone went, oh, for God's sake, there's your 40 million, 10s and 20. It just is. I think there's some examples and people need to get their head around this. It is a different culture. It's a different way of thinking. And maybe if you just have all the money and you're that rich, you don't pander to European timescales, and those powers don't really mean things to you that way. So it will be interesting to see if there is any more. And there's quite a few players linked with Saudi clubs as well, if this comes up again.
You know where I went with it in our private chat? I was like, oh God, is that the first sign of, the wheels coming off and that they're losing interest in the project? But of course, I suppose with the tournament coming up, that's probably not the case. It is, yeah. I think what everyone was saying when we were saying that initially was it is thought of as a long-term project. So I guess when you see the likes of the Dubravka going out and you're seeing those rumors of genuine interest and, You and I may have heard one or two other things in terms of money being spent by same boys. It's probably not going away anytime soon. So, look, I agree with the general consensus, although the comments went a bit crazy there at one point. But I do admit with the jive very much with the general thing of get your wallets out, lads, even if it's just to pay the money on those contracts and keep us with our good players that we love. But it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks. Hopefully it's not going to be that couple of weeks that ends limply with no progress. And I hope we don't limp into the second half of the season with the contracts thing completely unsettling our push for the two big pots, because they're right there for us, Dave. They're right there for us. Look, hopefully it's going to be exciting. And in the words of the Virgin Mary, hold on to your butts. But last word to you, my friend, as usual. What do you reckon? How optimistic are you around Liverpool doing at least one of the two things that we want, recruitment or contracts settled?
I don't know if we're getting giddy, Trev, because there's just something to actually talk about, even though it's not something like actually solid with Khvicha. But it's just a bit of like explosion. I think people latched onto it because it's like, at least Liverpool have been linked with someone tangible by someone who's respectable. So maybe there's that. We'll see. If there's an outgoing, as you said, like, I think it's all systems go. If there's an outgoing and a big outgoing, especially in the forward line, like, I think some exciting things might be happening. My only thing is, Trev, and we know we keep saying this, I'm still a bit astonished that we have not talked about one contract at least getting resolved, and we've not had that and eulogize. That is starting to worry me a bit. And all this talk about, but Salah and Virgil want to stay. Yes, they clearly do. No doubts about that. There will come a point where they might start to think, these are taking the piss, by the way. These are absolutely taking the by, like, I'm the best player in the world in my position. Like, what is going on? And then there probably will be agents in their ears going, well, yeah, you're not wrong. I have told you this way and I have fielded offers, but you've said to me you want to stay. Like, I don't want it to come to that. And also, just the freaking boost we would get if one of the big names renewed, Trev. Do you know what I mean? What a boost that would be to the season. And the other thing, and I know this is a long final word, I just have my concerns about this Trent thing. And it's getting to the stage where either way, for me, a resolution might just be best for all parties.
Yeah, I agree on that completely. I think it's going to make things a lot simpler, and people can get their minds wherever they need to be. They can start consolidating their hatred or their love or whatever it happens to be, because when it's up in the air, like I say, just the uncertainty adds to the toxicity. For sure. And I'm including the players themselves, and that that those guys are bantering amongst themselves about the contract situation. Of course they are. Like, that's what professional footballers do. They're not half as delicate as we think they are, and that will be a constant source of conversation. We see them jibing at each other about contracts. So I think everyone will be a lot more calm and settled if they get those things done. Let's hope that's what we're doing when we're on this next show. We've gone long. It's nearly an hour and 10 minutes, but that's what it means to us to be back in business on the Transfer Show. We're doing one a week at least. Hopefully we'll be doing more, Dave. But for now, from Dave, from myself, good luck.